All right, so we have a half hour before we're going to start presentation. So I want to now get this vector design, which I use to kind of remind you how to manipulate your black shape in vector.com and freeware. And then we download it as a JPEG at 3000 by 3000 pixels, right? Because we downloaded it, it shows up in our downloads folder. So then I moved that to the desktop. Here it is. Now this is what's called a transitional file. So I'm not even going to change its name for this. I'm just going to give it a color I never use, and that's going to be yellow. Right? And it's going to keep that on the desktop. If I wanted to, I could rename it. I usually call these test transition files. Why is it a transitional file? There's nothing wrong with this file. It's perfectly clean because it came from a vector, but it is rasterized into a 3000 by 3000 pixel JPEG, right? And JPEG is what's called a loss compression. It's not the best thing. So, like I said at the end of the last video, I want to turn this into my own vector file that I can save instead of just having it in vector.com's memory. Because as freeware, they have no obligation to hold on to that for me, right? So, what do I do? Well, I'm going to use the programs that I do own that are on these computers for students to use. And I'm going to open it with Adobe Illustrator, which is the professional software to use with vector design. And when I open it, just like when you opened your refined sketch in vector.com, it comes in as an image because this is a pixel-based image. Yet again, if I zoom in enough, I'll see those pixels. But instead of tracing over this now with a whole new program, which is very similar to vector.com, I am going to click on it so that it's highlighted. You see it here. You can also select it there. And then I'm going to go to Properties. So those of you who have not done this but have finished your vector in vector.com have outputted it as a JPEG. Now you open that JPEG in Adobe Illustrator and you click on it, and then you go to Properties, and then you're going to click on Image Trace. And I have videos that show this from last class. But under Image Trace, I'm going to click on Black and White Logo. And image tracing is what's called vectorizing. It takes pixelated images and it traces them into a vector path. So when I do that, I need to open the advanced options because the best closest setting for what we're doing, black shaped vectors, is black and white logo. But we don't want white. We just want black. So I need to open the advanced options. Then I need to open the advanced drop down in the advanced options. This is all job security, baby. I'm going to do all this. And then you're going to click on Ignore Color. And Ignore Color, when you're using for black and white mode, what that does is it changes it from being black shapes with white shapes around it to just black shapes. Now when that looks good, and it should look good because now it's showing it to us as a vector. You see how there's no pixels? But it's still just previewing it. So if it looks good, we hit expand either here or here. And expanding out of image trace turns it into a vector. If I use the small selection tool, I can see the anchor points, just like I could see it in vector.com. But the difference is, with Illustrator, I can now say File, Save As. And I'm going to save it to my computer. First, I'm going to save it with my name. And this is assignment 4. Black shape logo, right? First, I'm going to save it to the desktop as a working format. Like PSD is PhotoP's working format, right? And Photoshop's working format. AI is Adobe Illustrator's working format. So I might as well save it like that first, in case I ever want to make changes while it's in Adobe Illustrator. But the ones that are going to be most useful for us are what are called the transferable formats. So then I save as that same name, but I save it first as an SVG. I have it on the board in this order. First as an EPS, And that is a transferable vector format that Adobe made to work within Adobe programs. Save it again, same name, it just will have a different file format at the end. So that was an EPS. And then we're going to save it a third time, just like it says on the whiteboard. Save as or save a copy. Either way works. SVG for scalable vector graphic. Okay. Now SVG works best with PhotoP when PhotoP is working. And EPS works best with Photoshop. And since PhotoP is not working for us at the moment, or PhotoP is not working for us at the moment, let me make sure. I always like to use freeware if I can. And remember, you can download freeware for Photoshop clones like GIMP or even PhotoP. But I am going to use instead, let me find my EPS and find my SVG. And I'm going to mark these as gray, but they're on my desktop. These are the ones with the horns. Now notice the EPS doesn't even have an image icon with it. But if I open up this SVG with a web browser and I zoom in, now with horns, it's always going to be perfectly clean. So these are vector files that we were able to save. That's why we took them into Illustrator. Okay, now, I can't put them up to Canvas yet to turn them in because they're vectors. They're not raster format. They're not online formats. So how can I get it into this format where they're PNG, free floating? I'm going to open it with, I'm going to open Photoshop. And I'm going to say File, New. And I'm going to say 8 by 10. And I like to do it by 350 pixels per inch. But as long as it's at least 8 by 10 by 300, you are meeting standard minimum print resolution. I like 350. I call it my studio resolution. That's what I would always give jobs to for printing, so that the people doing the layout could always zoom in on it a little bit if they needed to. So 350 is just a little bit better than the minimum. Okay, now I'm going to take the EPS file. So you need to be organized and know what it is, and drag and drop it on. And then scale it to fit nicely within your 8 by 10. So you want to treat this black space as though it is the black mat. So you size it to look good on the paper within the black mat. Then hit return. And what's nice is this is now rasterized, but it's not, or a raster program, but this program or this layer that we dragged and dropped in from an EPS is still a vector, which means it can be made to fit any size we want. Also, what we did is I made 2 additional backgrounds. You can look at the past videos for more context on this. I'm going to go pretty quickly. I'm going to fill it with 50% gray, and I'm going to fill this one with black. And you want your symbol to be, you want it to be clear, you want it to be engaging, and you want it to be versatile. This is now where we can make this black shaped logo, which looks really pretty clear, even at low scale. We want it to be even more versatile by working on different backgrounds. And it works on white fine, works on gray fine, does not look fine on black, right? Black on black, though you can still kind of see it. So one of the reasons you can kind of see it is because vector programs like Illustrator output black as what's called a 100% CMYK black. Whereas Photoshop runs on RGB mode, which is for the computer screen. This is an RGB black. So the difference between RGB black and CMYK black. But all I have to do to change it to the same black is double click on the gray part of my vector smart object, go to color overlay, and choose full bottom left-hand corner black. And that black is now the same black as this. So it completely disappears. That's what's called 100% black. Okay, anyway, what else can I do? I can give it an offset. An offset helps you see it even on dark colors. So I'm just going to do it with a stroke. Same kind of stroke that you have when you do it in a vector program like vector.com or in Illustrator. But here we have a few more options for the stroke, which is why I prefer it. Like we can put it on the inside of the shape. We can put it on the outside of the shape. Right? Or we can put it split down the middle in the center of our lines. And I actually like it for this design better on the inside of the shape. And maybe a little bit thinner. Or thicker. Maybe about right there. Now this is perfectly clean because it's all based on the vector. Does that make sense? And it could be resized to any size I want. And it'll always be perfectly clean. So that is my black shape vector. How can I save it to put it up to canvas? I simply turn off all the background so it looks like this. And then I say File, Save a Copy. And this is now going to be a PNG format. Right? And I need to label it. This is my black shape symbol. I'm going to do it to the desktop. So it's really easy to find. And now it looks good on white, looks good on gray, looks good on black. It is all black. There's no color in it. Here it is. I'm going to mark it orange. Now to add color. All I have to do is duplicate that same smart object. I'm going to turn on the gray background because it's nice to design color on gray. And I'm going to revisit these effects. My color overlay I'm going to turn off. I don't need solid black. But if I want to just fill it with a simple color, I could change this color from black to something else, like a nice blue. I'm going to do like a sky blue. Ooh, pretty. And maybe that's my color variation. And then I would save it by turning off that background, save it as a PNG with color in the name. But I can do more than just a simple color with the white offset. I can put a gradient on there. This is the gradient I used for the last class example, but let's go in and let's give it some orange gradients, like it's on fire. And I can mess with that gradient. I can add to it. That's kind of interesting. Putting white in there, or I can make that white like a very light pink instead. Ooh, very nice. I can play with the angle of it, though I kind of like that angle. I can play with the scale of it, how tight, how broad is that. And I can play with the color overlay on top of it, and I can fade it in. So this is kind of interesting. And maybe I change it from normal mode to dissolve mode. So I get this kind of marbled texture of little blue speckles on this warm gradation. Then I can add a drop shadow. And I can control it. So really just playing with these things, which we talked about last class as well, but this is where you really get to fine-tune it. You can even play with 3D effects, bevel and emboss. You can even put your own texture on it. The texture I like out of Photoshop is this water texture. And if you think, oh, that looks terrible, you're not wrong, but you can change the scale down so it's a lot more subtle. Take the depth down. And you can play with the opacity of it as well. So I'm going to make this texture very subtle, but now it's even in the stroke. So as I zoom in, you'll see this texture now even in the stroke. And maybe if I don't have the gradient overlay,